It was a night that should have been like any other. A drive down a lonely farm road, the kind of place where the air feels thick with silence and the shadows stretch just a little too far. The road, mostly used for farm equipment, was narrow, with ditches so deep they felt like open graves. On either side, swampy woods loomed, their gnarled branches clawing at the sky. It was 1 a.m., the kind of time when the world is at its stillest, yet every sound seems magnified. It was fall, too, the season when the dying leaves whisper of endings. I drove cautiously, my eyes scanning the ditches for deer, their sudden leaps capable of turning a quiet drive into catastrophe. The road was empty. Not a single pair of headlights marred the darkness. Just me, the hum of the engine, and the occasional rustle of wind through the trees. Then, as if the night itself exhaled, a pocket of ground fog rolled over the road. The mist curled around the car, thick and unyielding, its presence suffocating. Visibility shrank to almost nothing, and I slowed to a crawl, gripping the steering wheel like it was my lifeline. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the fog parted. That's when I saw it. A human figure, or what was left of one, was clawing its way out of the ditch to my right. My heart slammed into my ribs. The figure had no legs, just a torso and arms, dragging itself through the wet grass and mud. Its movements were wrong, jerky, unnatural, almost as if reality itself was struggling to keep up. It didn't crawl. It jumped, its limbs snapping into positions they shouldn't have been able to reach, like a broken marionette dancing to a silent, sinister tune. I froze, my foot hovering over the brake, but instinct overrode curiosity. As the car sped past, I turned my head to get one last look, a desperate attempt to convince myself I wasn't seeing what I thought I was. But before I could truly process the figure, it was gone, vanished, as if it had never been there. The ditch was empty, save for the wet gleam of mud under my headlights. My skin prickled, every hair standing on end. I kept driving, though my hands were shaking so badly it was a miracle I didn't swerve off the road. When I reached a field entrance a few miles down, I made the worst decision I could have in that moment. I turned around. Adrenaline surged through me as I gunned the car back the way I'd come, my eyes locked on the road and the ditches. I told myself I hadn't seen anything, that it was just a trick of the fog and shadows. But deep down, I knew better. I drove past the spot where it had appeared, my pulse hammering in my ears. Nothing. The road was empty once more, but the feeling of being watched stayed with me the entire way home. For days, I couldn't shake the image. I told a few people, but their reactions ranged from disbelief to nervous laughter. Eventually, I stopped talking about it. What else could I do? No one would believe me. Still, I refused to drive that road again, the memory too vivid, too raw. Weeks passed, and life moved on, until the day my boss asked me to help with fieldwork. We needed to get to a farm that required us to take that very road. My stomach twisted as we approached the stretch where I'd seen the figure. The memory came rushing back, sharper than ever. I couldn't keep quiet. "I saw something here," I blurted out, my voice trembling despite my best efforts. "A few weeks ago. It looked like a man with no legs crawling out of the ditch." My boss didn't laugh, he didn't even question me. Instead, he gave me a look that sent a chill down my spine, a mix of recognition and unease. "You're not the first to see something like that," he said quietly. "Years ago, a farmer from around here, a man from one of those families that seemed cursed, you know the kind, rolled his tractor into one of these ditches, crushed him to death beneath it, right about here." The air in the truck seemed to grow colder. I could barely breathe as his words settled over me like a shroud. I stared out the window, my gaze fixed on the ditches as we drove past. The image of the crawling figure burned in my mind, sharper now with the knowledge of its possible origin. To this day, I can't forget what I saw. I've tried to convince myself it was a trick of the light, a hallucination brought on by exhaustion and fog, but deep down I know the truth. What I saw that night wasn't just my imagination. It was him, the farmer who never left his land, even in death.